Hello and welcome to the TR Talk Show. I'm your host, Hawk Robinson, and today we have a special guest co-host, Danielle Whitworth. Hello there. She's joining over Jitsi, and hello. It's acting up a little bit. I don't know how much is her network connection or what's going on. We're having a little latency and lag, it looks like. Having some major latency there. And so today it's Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019, and we're live every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time. You can find the video archives, live show links, podcast files, and more information at www.trtalkshow.com. This is episode number 5. So today we're going to discuss a number of topics as we usually do so, but we'll also, with co-host being here with Danielle, pending her network connection cooperating, be continuing to talk about our experiences at last month's American Therapeutic Recreation Association conference in Reno, Nevada. So some of the other topics we'll cover today include updates on the BCI Games Jam, that's the brain-computer interface information, and an event coming up that recreation therapists might find of note. Some problems with the CTRS flashcards from the Mometrics Media. We've seen all kinds of problems. These are the study guides that are on Amazon that a lot of people use to try to prepare for the NCTRC's CTRS, National Council for Therapeutic Recreation Certifications, Certified Therapeutic Recreation Specialist certification. And there's a lot of problems with these cards, and we're going to talk about that, especially in the context of the neuroscience of learning. We've touched on it a little bit before, and we're going to go into a little more depth about that. And what can be done to address the issues with these study guides that are really, from a neuroscience perspective, incredibly ineffective and just very wrong-headed in their approach. And we're going to say so, and we're going to spell out solutions to that so that they can become more useful. We also will mention a little bit about our upcoming training workshops and some of the webinars that will be coming up on the ATRA site where you can earn some CEUs. And also you should know that RPG Therapeutics LLC does have some open positions. You can learn more about that at rpgtherapeutics.com. They're looking specifically for CTRSs who have extensive knowledge with role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, Doctor Who, Call of Cthulhu, many others. It's very strict and stringent requirements, so it's difficult to meet. And if you don't quite meet the requirements, you might want to consider going over to the nonprofit organization RPG Research, volunteering there to fill in any gaps that you might have. But both organizations are founded heavily upon recreation therapy, therapeutic recreation, neuroscience, research, psychology. And so recreation therapists really will find themselves fitting in well into those organizations that use TR so extensively. Working with a wide range of populations from 2 years old to senior adults, everything in between, lots of special needs populations, etc. All right, Danielle, are we back up and running? Did you reset your network?
I did not because it
okay.
15 minutes.
All right. In the future, make sure you reset your network, and hopefully it'll behave better. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So now that you're back, let's go ahead and start with covering your experience. John has had time to talk about his. I spoke about mine. When all three of us went to the ATRA Conference in September in Reno, and we were each kind of doing different things, right? We did our workshop together Saturday, and then we kind of each went our different ways, attending different programs so that we could cover more ground and then come back and discuss them. And, of course, there was the networking and all that and the other programs we were running out of the bus and the trailer. So why don't you go ahead and start from the beginning when you first started interacting with folks and go from there.
So I first started interacting with folks pretty much right out. I tried to, we unloaded and set up for our big...
our display with our bus and trailer and everything in the presentation, right? Yeah.
And then we immediately went into going to all these places and talking with people just in the hallways. And I got to meet the person who was running the first person I interacted with was the person who was running the liaison with the hotel. She was very kind, and I cannot remember. I'm horrible at names. I cannot remember her name right now. We had several very good conversations throughout the first day when there wasn't really that many attendees to the next day when everyone was there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very nice to meet her. Then one of the first people I met actually outside of our presentation was Kyle.
Right.
Kyle is now a volunteer.
Yeah, he joined RPG Research. Yeah.
Several conversations, and he was applying before he ever left ATRA.
Right. Yes. He was showing up the trailer afterwards and everything. He was totally engaged right from the beginning. That's right. He was quite stoked and still is stoked.
And then I met up with the Washington TR folks, including Emily Messina and the individuals who work at St. Luke's Hospital.
Yeah, Professor Emily Messina runs the TR department at Eastern Washington University.
Yes.
Yep.
And we had several good conversations. I was hanging out with John when we did that. That was during the first meeting.
Do you have any, okay, it's great that you had these good conversations, but what were things that you talked about that you think people here will be interested in hearing about the things that were discussed?
So with Emily Messina, we mostly talked about who her new students were, and she started introducing me to her students, and I was telling them about their opportunities to get more hours. Most of the students who were there, however, were seniors on their way to find internships.
Right.
So I don't know if any of them, I know that none of them have contacted us, but I don't know if any of them are actually interested.
Yeah, none of them came to our tables when we were doing the rapid. What?
Oh, not during the rapid thing, but during the what was the last part?
That's what I mean. The rapid mentoring thing. None of them came to our tables. So.
No, but his name starts with an A, and I'm really sorry. It's Adrian. He came to the bus and ended up playing Neverwinter Nights with the group of people who...
Well, we still have to go through that purple clipboard of all the contacts to get back to.
Yes.
So, and where did it go? Because I had it on the table and now it's disappeared again. Somebody moved it.
Oh, that's not me. I
Okay. All right.
purposely left it where it was.
Yeah, we have to find it again because we need to go through and call everybody. Some of that stuff now goes all the way back to Gen Con. We still haven't called. So we need to get on that. Anyway, so
I spent a lot of my time talking to students about opportunities out there and how you don't just have to marry a population. You can marry a modality that you love. And I say marry very loosely because they were all convinced that you need to focus in on one set population. So you need to know everything about that population and not be well-rounded in that fact. And
that's kind of the antithesis of the holistic concept of rec therapy.
It is. So they had this idea, and I spoke to a lot more people from. Oh, I just lost the one college that brought 20 kids.
Well, there was a couple of them. It was University of Utah and BYU. There were two of them.
Yeah.
They had 17. And you call them kids. Some of them were older than you.
I consider myself
Okay. All right.
I'm not a professional. I'm a kid. I am a professional, but it feels like a lot of the time that I'm still a kid because I don't have many years under my belt doing this professionally out in the wild. That's what I mean when I say kid. I don't mean it disrespectfully.
All right.
So I was talking to all these students, and we were talking about, that's a conversation that I kept having with Utah students, especially, that they were looking at older adult, young children, individuals with autism. And I'm like, what about all these other people? So
when you say all these other people, what examples were you using for them to consider?
TBI, individuals who have DID,
right.
individuals who have other mental disorders, adults with the problems that are most likely addressed as children, so individuals with dyslexia and other learning disabilities, especially ones that don't get diagnosed until adulthood.
Right.
So I was like, there's all these other people out there too. You only want to help older adults.
Mm-hmm.
You might like working with older adults better. And I was like, well, there's other ways to go about this. You can marry a modality. Like, is there something that you really like to do? Are you really into rock climbing or gaming?
Yeah, but you don't want to stick to only one, because at a facility, part of what we're supposed to do is offer a wide tool belt. Remember, we're supposed to go through the recreation and leisure education phase with clients, because when we do an assessment and find out what they're interested in, they have a limited scope of interests that are good for them. You want to be able to offer them a wide tool belt to find what intrinsically motivates them.
With TR, you end up building that wide tool belt when you're in college to a certain extent and through your life experiences.
Right. Yeah, that was part of why I went into TRs, because I had all these previous activity skills and everything, both individual and as groups. And when I discovered TR, when I was doing the research into different professions, I was originally looking at child psychology and such. It was great because I had a background in painting and photography and outdoors and automotive and extreme sports and and basketball and all of that. So it was very appealing to be able to bring in that wide tool set. So when you say focus on just one modality, I'm kind of surprised that.
Well, no, I'm not saying necessarily focus on one modality, but okay. I married a modality, but I say I joke, because I love the gaming aspect.
Okay.
So for me, gaming is a very wide
range. Right.
I have Ascension sitting on my desk with me, but
right.
I use role-playing games all the time.
And music.
So
we do the drum circles and such too. So.
And drum circles.
Right.
So when you have to find things that peripherally attach to those as well. As kind of what I was saying too to them, is that.
So how do they react to that?
Populations.
Yeah, how do they react to you saying that?
They kind of like never. So a couple of them said, I've never thought about choosing something that I'm good at and specializing it and then using other things as needed. And I was like, yeah, it's really kind of great. And you have to be in a special situation to be able to do that. Like, this is more RT versus TR. So recreation therapy versus therapeutic recreation is kind of what we were having this conversation about. So you go out and as a recreation therapist, you're in the wild. People are going to find you in a community center or something of that nature because you're providing this service. And you're going to give them, whether they're a kid that walked in off the street, someone who's homeless, someone who's an adult with developmental disabilities, someone who has just a physical disability, the same treatment. Versus when you're in a care facility and you're working with adults with developmental disabilities, you'll fill that tool set a lot bigger. That's kind of also a thing with TR, is that you have this huge tool belt that they try and have you leave college with. Like, I know pottery and drawing and all these other peripheral skills that I'll probably not use in our company or in the future because I feel like I've married role-playing games.
And music.
But that doesn't.
And music.
That doesn't mean that I'm not. What? And music.
And music.
Yes.
Don't forget the music.
Yes. My years spent working with a mechanic and going and doing first aid at a racetrack probably and helping people rebuild their cars after the race.
You never know. I can totally think of a LARP scenario that would completely fit that. For example, if we did a dystopic LARP scenario that was basically a Mad Max type setting, that would be totally... Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff there. Because I used to teach at the American Automotive Institute, so I could totally come up with a scenario that put to use our mechanic knowledge in the LARP session. So if they played a character that was a mechanic and needed to keep the vehicle going in a dystopic zombie world setting or something. Totally. So you never know. That's the beauty of it when you have these other skills. And we don't want to talk too much about the RPG stuff because that's what the RPG talk show is for. But
yes.
that's certainly, yeah. So point taken.
But I was talking about it in context of a
Sure.
game.
Sure.
Saying that you can use your other skills. In
right.
Because like the drawing, that's not far-fetched. I'm not the world's best drawer. but I do know a lot of skills to get someone who has some very basic skills to the next level to be able to draw their character that they're drawing that they want, because that is a peripheral skill that we do use.
Right. So what are some things you learned when you were there, either from the workshops or talking to other people, etc.?
I went to several workshops that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, we tried to spread out. We tried to go to different ones rather than all go to the same one, so that we could compare and contrast.
Spend a lot of time making sure that we went out to different ones.
Yeah.
On the way there.
Yep.
So I went. I think my second session was the NCTRC internship guidelines for individuals who are running NCTRC internships.
And what stood out for you from that one?
What stood out to me from that one is that although they have a lot of rules, they have no structure, and that means that we can take as many interns as we can have without diminishing their education. And I need to be able to sit down with them on a weekly basis. Right,
the regular check-in meetings, right, yeah. Right, which is something that we're kind of doing with our training sessions, and we need to maybe formalize a little bit more here or over at RPG Research, but yeah, it's an important process. Well, we've got all those volunteers we're training and stuff, so it's certainly a process we should work on. But, we've done it already with the LLC when you guys came up on your 90-day review. We sat down and talked about what was working and wasn't working on the races and such.
There's a huge difference between 2 people that we're covering and the 100 plus that we're going to have probably by the end of this month.
Right, over RPG Research. I agree. It's definitely creating some administrative challenges.
Yeah.
So what else?
That's really what I learned from that NCTRC internship class that I went to. It was held by the board of NCTRC, which was kind of interesting to put faces to names, because I've had to send stuff to them because of the way it's set up. So that was pretty much all I learned, was that we could have multiple interns as long as we have that one-on-one care, and I have 40 hours a week.
Right.
That was
good. Okay. What else did you learn from the other workshops?
So I went to designing and marketing for therapeutic use of applications of marketing and development assessment tools. And I found an assessment tool, which I was hoping to apply
unpack that for me a bit, though. This is the use of, so these are tools to help recreation therapists market, or you said the therapeutic use of marketing? I've run that by
or not therapeutic use. I mean, the use of, I said it backwards. Sorry.
Okay.
So we're using that to market our therapeutic programs. So there's 2 kind of heads to this. There was businesses that are out in the community and need to market to the community to get people in. Mm-hmm. And then there was inner workplace marketing. Mm-hmm. We don't need to have award ceremonies. One of the coolest things I saw that would be helpful for someone who's in TR, where they're in a facility where TR is a small portion of it, is that they have award ceremonies and they invite management to come and give out the awards. And then during the award ceremony, when you receive an award, you have to tell all the people there why what you like about the program, mm-hmm. and why it is a value to you. So you're letting your patients market for you for more people to be sent to your groups, and for your department to expand, which is very important for a lot of people. Then for our side, there was a few things with marketing within our own organization that I think would be really important for RPG Research, myself. But you take this survey and you figure out where you're weak or strong. And since we're all volunteers, I'm very interested to see how the gambit of volunteers sees our marketing mm-hmm. out in the world. Because my theory is that they don't see all of the time that you spend on Twitter and Facebook and other anymore. Such things.
I don't spend. That was last year. Last year is when I spent all the time.
Well, you have spent.
Now it's
or
just
going
automated.
Out to the conferences or talking to people who send you emails and stuff of that nature. They
Yeah,
don't see that marketing.
by far the best results have been from the brochures. That's like by
Yes.
far the best results.
Hmm.
The web
And it
stuff
might
and
not be
everything.
visible from outside.
What's that? Well,
It
no,
might
but
not be visible
they
from
get
outside.
passed around and people spread the word because of it. I mean, we do all of the web stuff. We're Google #1 search
Mhm.
engine, all of that. But yeah, we have no formal marketing campaign. We were putting one together, and
Mhm.
then our marketing person backed out after a few months of putting work in, and then didn't give us any of the materials that she'd started on. So
Yeah.
we're back to square one with that. But the idea was somebody else was supposed to take over focusing on that marketing, and so we have no marketing. We had a marketing campaign last year that I ran, and it tripled our donations and raised awareness, but it took up an awful lot of my time every day,
Yeah.
and the return was still too small. And so I said, told the board I wasn't going to do that this year. We needed somebody else to manage that,
So the other part is
and
that
it
there
shows. The
was,
donations have flattened.
yes, they have. As I've been going through it, I can tell you that for
Mm-hmm.
100% sure.
Yep.
The other part was that they gave us a few good ideas for marketing outside of that, where we would run for I say corporate because that's what they used in their context, corporate retreat like things
Yeah.
for the community,
I've done
where
that
you
many times.
it's not like that. That's why I use quotations. It is where you take the heads of programs that you want to set up. So you take someone from the VA hospital, you invite someone from Spark Central, you invite someone from a nursing home, somewhere where you're looking to put programs either for RPG research or for RPG therapeutics to put it in context for our
Mm-hmm.
organizations.
Yep.
And you run a tabletop and a LARP, a shortened version, for those people. In the idea is that you're marketing to them for their clients,
Mm-hmm.
and that it is big and it is open
Mm-hmm.
to the heads of different
So
companies that
that's
are
a
around.
wonderful utopic ideal to bring them from different organizations. I've been able to do it in an organization where I bring in heads to do that. But doing
Yeah.
that across multiple organizations who might be competitors, who completely different schedules, that sounds really problematic across multiple organizations
It was more
at a
like an
time.
open gala
Right. Right.
idea, and I thought that would be kind of interesting to see if we could even do
I
something
think
of
if we
that
did it,
nature.
yeah, if it was done in conjunction with some other event, ATRA or a jobs fair or something like that,
Yeah.
then that might be viable. But we would need space and pay for it and all of that. So, yeah, those are all possibilities when there's funding.
And yeah, when there's funding, I thought that
Exactly.
was a really
All kinds
great
of things open
idea.
up when there's funding.
I think that would be a really great idea for
Hmm.
once we have more like
So let's try to keep
10 or
this less
15.
about let's keep this less about our
Yeah.
businesses and more about what others in the
Yeah.
TR industry could learn, who maybe students or
But for
professionals.
that, for the TR industry for this,
Mm-hmm.
what you could take away from this is that idea of a gala, which I just used us as an example.
Understood.
The idea of doing award ceremonies where you bring down people from the higher up.
Mm-hmm.
And that also shows your evidence-based practice because you can talk about that a little bit while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then this is mostly from this one. What we're doing is we're breaking down the barriers to administrations, physicians, other therapists in your area, the community that you would invite. So, like, you have a parent that doesn't understand why this is important, and their child's in a facility, and this is what all they talk about, and you don't know why they have recreation. And then also, it's good for other clients, especially if you have new clients. That was one of the big things that they talked about on that.
Okay.
Um,
What else?
and the other major one that I went to, oh, there's two more left. One I didn't take notes for, but this one I did. It was the Mighty Pin. And they used a website, which I did not write down, for their basis. It's another, what is that called? Certification that you can get for writing using therapeutic writing. I think it was AP something. It was for therapists.
Okay. Well, if you don't have the info, let's move on then. Or talk what you
But
know
it was
about it.
another 1,000 hours that you could get to implement writing better.
Okay.
And it's basically a whole nother BA. If you look at how many classes and stuff like that you have to take.
Yeah. Do you?
And
Okay. Is it accredited or? Okay.
yes, it's accredited. That's why. It is basically like getting another BA, except for you
Is
had a
it from?
certification instead of a BA.
Okay. When I do a
And
search
it was a
for Mighty
writer's.
Pen, I see the Virginia War Memorial announces the Mighty Pen Project to teach writing class for military veterans and others
That
wishing
was
to
just what
chronicle their
she
own
named her.
experiences. Okay, that's the
That
only I
was just
found
what
on
she.
Google.
Yeah,
That was.
it's not called the Mighty Pen. The
Oh, okay.
writing
Okay.
workshop was called the Mighty Pen.
Okay.
Um,
So
and
unpack that. What is significant about that particular kind of program? Why would somebody consider going through all those extra hours and everything else?
So why you would go through all those extra hours and stuff of that nature is so that you had a better understanding of how to use writing therapeutically so you don't accidentally stumble into somewhere where it's too dark, you're all alone in this room with 10 students and you don't know how to move on because they're talking about not just like what we do where we write down, how you felt about the adventure and maybe write a letter to your character and then your character writes a letter back. They're talking about taking other pieces of work and either like blinking it out so that the words that they want are left or writing poems or all of this stuff, especially in drug rehab, was her example. And how it's challenge by choice. So you just have to write a poem, right? They sit down that day, you have to write a poem. They teach you a little bit about a style of poem, and then you talk about it afterwards. Everyone has to share. There's no apologies. That was one thing I really liked, is that they told you cannot apologize for how you wrote. You wrote what you wrote, and that's your level, and no apologies.
That's how we play. That was one of the rules for hacky sack: is you don't apologize.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
So
everybody says sorry, 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 sorry all the time, and it gets really annoying.
that's pretty much what she said. And it allows you to build up confidence about your writing because people compliment you on it
Right.
as time goes on.
Yeah. Well, as you
But
build competence, it builds confidence. Yep.
yeah, one thing that she has is that they almost always go right for their deepest, darkest thing and put it out on paper and then give it out to the group. And then they break it down a little bit if it's appropriate. If not, you just say, wow, that was great and move on. Because, but knowing that when to unpack someone's writing and when to not is really why she said the certification was important at all. And she didn't have the certification. Her supervisor had the certification and supervised her through getting to a point where she could be alone with these kids doing these activities. So she said that it was actually very appropriate for one person in an organization to have this extra certification and to train everyone else to have done this and then just do checkups and making sure that you're executing it appropriately.
Okay.
And that if you're using it as an addition, that having the certification probably isn't important.
Okay.
So,
All
and
right.
then the last one that I went to, which was probably, well, this one was the last one, but the one before this, that was probably the most fun and the most informative for me because it directly relates to what we do, is the drumming two-part workshop. So the first part, we talked almost solely about theory and why this works, and they have their PowerPoints saved on our thing, but I do not have access to it right now.
Okay.
But how they're using it to do a study right now for individuals with developmental disabilities. and physical disabilities
Okay.
through, I think it was one of California's programs.
Okay.
Um, and I also got to meet the person who is not a therapist who has been running the drum bus, which is actually I found out by looking at your stacks of videos a while back. One of the people that we actually have watched for training.
Oh, from the drumming training videos?
Yes. So
It's the same
uh,
guy?
it's the same guy.
Okay, who does the Hawaii and other retreats and such with okay.
Or not the Hawaii treats. It was one of the other ones that we watched. It
Okay.
wasn't the main guy, but it was one of the guys.
Okay.
And what he did is he showed us some different drumming techniques for therapeutic intent.
Mm-hmm.
And that he only does when he has a recreation therapist or occupational therapist on site.
Again, a question mark, occupational therapist? What does an occupational therapist have to do with drumming?
And psychologist was the other one that was
Okay.
there. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Well, it's because
But
OT has been encroaching into the whole rec world, so but they're just not trained for it. It's bizarre.
yeah, it's unfortunate that they're doing group activities that they might be in over
Yeah,
their
it's
head.
outside their scope. Yeah. But
So what he was doing, because this is his scope, I guess that because they're just watching one or two clients, maybe that would be why. But uh, sorry, I can hear myself now all of a sudden. Uh,
you could try
Look
refreshing
very-
your browser if you want.
yeah, I'm gonna refresh my browser.
Okay. She'll be right back shortly. Just sometimes every now and then Jitsi acts up a little, and quick browser refresh can usually address it. So we'll see if that helps her any. Welcome back.
Welcome back. All right, glad to be back. So what he was doing for drumming, which is different than what we did, he taught us the techniques that we use, techniques that should be used for you guys, which is rumbles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's starting off by just banging your drum and then getting louder, or quieter, or faster, or slower. And he didn't actually have to directly tell us much, which was interesting. There was no front loading to the drum circle, which is very, I think, important for people to understand. Myself, I don't front load. So we were doing the rumbles and all the little things like that, getting louder and quieter, call and repeat, where I did something and then they did something and then I did something. But what he did to give it a therapeutic aspect was then he added I feel and then blank. So you were telling about your feelings and then you were creating.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that. I went through a drumming workshop about 10 years ago that did something like that.
Creating a I feel and then usually it was I feel and then they made like a different noise like happy.
Okay. Yeah.
And that then translated to other people and let other people know where you were. And by the end of it, we came back to it and everyone was feeling great or happy or excited or energized. What?
Or at least saying they were.
At least saying they
There
were.
is a
I
peer
felt a lot
pressure
more
aspect to it,
energized
but yeah.
afterwards.
Okay. Yeah.
So, or at least saying so. At first, everyone was like, "I feel tired."
It wasn't Toby Christian. It wasn't Toby Christensen, right?
No.
Okay, so I had a lot of one-on-one training in shamanic healing drumming and such with the guy that goes by the name Healing Drummer, and fascinating fellow. He was touring through here regularly, and then he got too big to come to Spokane. So now he just is like Seattle, New York, and places around the world and such. And he was already a really good percussionist, and he tells his personal story of how he was a bigwig sales guy for BMW or something and got really arrogant and cocky and full of himself. And that led to a divorce, and then his career crashed, and then he really had to do look at himself hard. He went on a spiritual search, eventually ended up talking to some shamanic drummer in Africa, and then she trained him, and that's his story. But he's kind of, I think, gone back into his old ways of he's gotten a little big-headed from it seems like. But anyway, but he does this
It's
great.
Mike Liston.
What's that?
Mike Liston.
That sounds familiar. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's because we've watched his tape on drumming.
Okay.
Other thing.
Well, but the thing about Toby is he's able to explain the therapeutic benefits of the drumming 5 different ways, if you will. If you want to hear it from a physiological perspective, he'll explain what happens with the parasympathetic system and the heart rate and the breathing, all that. If you want to hear it from a physics perspective, he'll talk about how the vibrations and sound waves and how they synchronize with the cells in our bodies and, just a whole physics level and such. If you want to hear it from different spiritual perspectives, he'll do it from the animist perspective of, your spirit guide and these creatures and all these spirits, what have you, bringing that from where he trained from in Africa. If you want to do it from a kind of India perspective with your chakras and your energy flow and things like that. So he has these different perspectives. It's very fascinating. And but while he does groups, he specifically does a lot of one-on-one healing drumming. And it can be for different things. And it's pretty fascinating. I don't know how much I shared with you guys that experience. Did I share much with you guys about that?
Yeah, you shared at least with me and John. I don't know if anyone else was here for that because we haven't done a lot of emphasis on drumming in a while.
Yeah, this year anyway. Yeah. We've got a new volunteer who he didn't want to do the RPG stuff that he auditioned for, actually the show, but he's very excited about the music, and so he might help us get that division ramped back up again.
That'll be nice.
But yeah, so yeah, there are physiological effects from drumming individually and in groups, and it can be a very powerful modality with a lot of benefit. And we've done our drum circles. We've had kids as young as 2 years old banging on them bongos like a chimp fest.
It was great. I love watching the little kids, especially the little kids that are like right at that age where they're like just about comprehending, and they're not just like
Right.
they're like.
Yeah. Well, and what was great was when we did that down up at the park that one time, the South Hill Park. I'm blanking at Manitou, and there was that kid who I think he was 2. And
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he kind of got on the big drum in the center stage there and was loving it. And everybody else started to play off of him. That was really, he loved that.
And that's what I meant too.
That was very
like
empowering,
Yeah. He was right at that age where you almost understand everything, but you don't quite. So you like almost get this beat going, and then you like get off, and then you get back onto the same beat.
And he was just beaming. He was just happy as a clam. Yep, that was great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very cool. So that's we'll definitely need to. That's yet another session we're going to need to work out, try to get our music program up and running again here. I got to get a couple of djembe heads replaced now. That was the other thing you were talking about, was he was talking about the Remo heads versus the others and such.
And so he keeps all of his Remo drums in his bus, rain, snow, shine, and they haven't cracked, but he has cases on all of his Remos.
And the cases cost as much as the drums.
Yes.
So, well, actually, for Remo drums, they're less than the Remos, but the Remo cases cost more than some of the drums. So that's the problem is I would love to have more Remo stuff, but they're easily 3-4 times the price. And
but every
so
year, Remo does a couple big donations, is what he was saying.
Okay.
So if we can get on their radar for community programs.
That's something to talk about on the board thing. Okay. So that's great. That's another amount. Was there anything else that you went through that wanted to point out from ATRA? You talked to some key people.
I did. I mostly, being at the level I am, and I, for the most part, was putting people to other people. However, I did have a great conversation with the person who does, I cannot remember his name. It's right at the tip of my tongue, for the book publisher.
Thomas Plashko.
What?
Thomas Plashko for Idle Arbor.
Yes.
Yes.
We stood there and had several great conversations about what he was doing 5-10 years ago with the with therapeutic recreation textbooks. And then what he's doing now, which is all of the spiritual versions of like finding your spiritual self and this holistic, more shaman like whole body thing that he's doing now.
Okay.
Which was very interesting. So he has two sides of his publishing.
So one of the things there, so we already had the red book with all the assessment tools that we've been using a lot of, but he had recommended I check out this green book because it had more assessment tools and how to build assessment tools. But when we went through it verbally, because you introduced me to him, we talked, and he seemed very interested in what we're doing because we're trying to create several new assessment tools between our observed immersion scale, our activity assessment tools, because the current, I've talked about on multiple shows now about how activity assessment tools are the foundation of therapeutic recreation. And yet there's no, that I can find anywhere, talking to him, talking to everybody at ATRA, talking to everybody on the ATRA list, talking on the Facebook pages, everywhere I go, asking, is there anywhere an established activity analysis form that has been evaluated for validity and reliability? And nobody can answer that. Everybody's like, well, we have this what we use in our facilities. And I'm like, yeah, can I see it? Like, well, some of them yes, some of them no. And they said they're all based on these books, which I have all of them pretty much. And none of those hold up, especially inter-rater reliability. So none of them have been assessed. And it is a cornerstone of recreation therapy. And so I'm really, this is something I hate to reinvent the wheel, but if it hasn't been created and the tools that are out there are faulty, I don't want our research to be just as faulty. So we've been working on and off on, our own activity analysis form that will hold up to inter-rater reliability and try to get all the other validity and reliability established. And one of the key things is getting away from the blank spaces, filling in the blanks. That's really, really bad for consistency. You need to have, controlled options, etc. Where we saw really good coefficients on that was the true and false, yes and no responses. Mm-hmm. Those were consistent for the most part, 0.8, 0.9 or better. But as soon as you got into the scales with descriptions or any of the fill in the blanks, completely falls apart. And it didn't seem to matter if I took it to an experienced rec therapist or one who's just, through school or somebody who's not. It just was way off. And even
amongst people in our organization that have the same mindset
right,
have discussed these concepts together and mm-hmm. have a very similar
but have a
ideal.
Completely different way of filling out the form. And that mm-hmm. is really bad for the clients. And that tells me there's a major flaw here that needs to be done. That's why I keep bringing it up. So anyway, he recommended the Green Book, Measurement for Leisure Services and Leisure Studies, by Monir Ar-Ragheb, PhD, because it tells you the whole process of building assessment tools. And so I'd run through what we'd already been doing before I bought this. I had to order this online, and I was tight on money at the time because we were worried about having enough gas to get home for good reason after such a busy summer. So I told you somewhere between 10 to 20 grand in gas I spent this summer.
And our number is somewhere around $1,000.
Yeah, that was because after my cards were all maxed out, we had to tap into that. So anyway, I got this later, and he recommended it, and it looks great, and I'm excited to really delve into it. But I'd run by him what we were doing as a process, and he said it sounded like we were totally on the right track. This will just help us have a more refined, detailed process. So we're on the right track, and we're going to keep improving it, and that's very exciting. And then, so we have these several assessment tools, and it was great geeking out with him about that.
Yeah. Well, and I got to geek out with him a little bit, too, because I found out that, I found out that he had a secretary at the last 10 years who he really helped build self-esteem and use these TR concepts in a work setting to allow her to build up more self-esteem and become more confident, because he hired her knowing that she wasn't gonna immediately do all these things correctly, but that over time she would be able to have these skills and be able to perform at a high level. knowing that he could really help her as a person. And he chose that over people who had 10 years worth of desk work, job stuff.
Yep. Well, it's seen potential in people. I
Yep.
hired people straight out of high school, no degrees, no certifications into tech, for example, because I could tell they had what it would take with the right mentoring. And it's that whole mentorship model that can be very powerful. I mean, it depends on who's doing the mentoring, but there's certainly, it's unfortunate that a lot of places have lost that. A lot of the vocational stuff and a lot of the mentorship approaches have disappeared heavily. From back in the 70s, there was a lot, and a lot of that's been killed off in the more recent decades, unfortunately. So I've tried to continue that with people I've mentored in photography and automotive and tech, computer tech, etc. And they've gone on to have great careers.
So I also had a few conversations that were very great with Sagmore Publishing.
Okay.
And they're sending me the book because the guy had to leave early for their workbook to get prepared for the Therapeutic Recreation CTRS test. Certified Therapeutic
which you're
Recreation
still, so
Specialist.
you've finished your degree, you did your internship,
Yep.
you just need to take the test.
Yep. I'm just really nervous about this
And
test because I want to do it
having
right,
huge
and I want to
test
do it right
anxiety,
once.
yeah. Well, so speaking of which, I had that on the topic. I'm glad that's a perfect segue. When do you expect to get that book? Have you contacted them?
Yeah, well, they contacted me last week,
Okay.
and the earliest they could send it out was yesterday,
Okay.
and so it should be in the mail today or tomorrow.
All right. Fingers
Is what they
crossed for
said.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll have to review that. So here I wanted
And
to
this
cover.
one is by Stumbo and
Okay.
Peterson.
So hopefully it's better because these Mometrics Media NCTR exam study guides and cards. Oh my goodness. We've talked about it over and over how bad they are.
Yeah, for another $60, I could get the color coded ones by Stumbo.
Okay,
For
we'll have to
this
compare and contrast
practice
those. I
test.
hope they're a lot better than these, because this is what. So the Mometrics ones, which have been around for years, they keep revising as the NCTRC revises. I don't think they revised it for the latest changes, but still mostly applicable. The biggest problem is they completely ignore what neuroscience says about learning, right? So here's one we went through recently. So the one side is outline the following elements of competency: cultural, educational, language, spiritual, and environmental. Remember this one?
Yeah, it was so convoluted.
So here's the
in the
question.
I could not tell you
Well,
exactly.
it's just not broken into manageable bite-sized pieces. So there's a concept in neuroscience and thinking about learning called chunking. And most human beings, depending upon the theory you ascribe to, can only handle 5 plus or minus 2 chunks of data at a time. And this affects us with language, with numbers, and with concepts. So a chunk could be different things. So for example, if I give you ABC, FBI, CIA, and those acronyms and such, those are not going to be 7 or 9 chunks, even though there's 7 or 9 letters there, because they're familiar to you.
Yep, I can remember.
Each one
4.
is a separate chunk. But if I lay out, and when I start to get up around 7 to 9, you're going to start having trouble remembering all of them. But because you have familiarity with those, you can chunk those together. But if I say to you ZX2, 953, 17Y, just random stuff that you're not familiar with, it's going to be much harder for you to chunk those as separate pieces. And so it's going to be closer to, once I start getting up around 12 characters or so, you're going to be like, I can't remember all that. It becomes very, very difficult to do. And language works that way as well. It doesn't matter what the language is. And this is where there can be this is where a lot of assessment tools that are Western developed have problems when they run into other cultures because of the language. It's not just that, even when it's translated, the tests don't work the same because the chunking changes. So I'm trying to remember the exact example, but so for example, in English, our numbers are a certain way, and in Mandarin, they're completely different, right, with the characters and everything. And there's a lot more going on there when you look at a Chinese numerical number than, Arabic numerals, right?
Yep.
And So that can be really problematic when you're doing IQ tests and things like that, because you're dealing with ideographs and pictographs, with different languages, as opposed to characters that form sounds. So these all have different effects. And then you also deal with complex words. So you'll do a series of words for testing IQ and capacity. And when they translate into another language, it doesn't work. So one word might be one syllable in one language, but 3 syllables in another language. And those 3 syllables will make it harder for them to recall because you're going to use up more of available cognitive capacity. What's that?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we have limited capacity in general. There's a bell curve of human beings, of everything. And in the majority of people, the neuroscience of learning, which generally does not focus on abnormal psychology and disabilities. It focuses on trying to figure out just how things work on average. And then you have abnormal neuroscience and neuropsychology and such, but that's a specialty. And, we were talking yesterday about the debunking of learning styles, that there is no such thing as a learning style. There are people who need adaptations for different disabilities, but on average, everybody learns the same. There's a best way to learn the best for everyone. Some people might need some adaptations for very specific disabilities, but overall, you want to try to use the same learning techniques. Those are the most effective techniques.
Yep.
And
which is why our school teachers are going to more of a choose your own adventure, like.
Well, some are. I wish there was a lot more.
If it's all of California has that curriculum, and it was actually written for the the children with disabilities. It's actually written by EWU professor couple said.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Cool.
Yeah.
Should get more info. Let us talk about that on RPG Talk Show or something.
Okay.
But one of the main concepts, and most people know this generally, but are really bad about following it, and that is differential learning versus mass learning. More simply, cramming versus spreading it out, doing a little bit at a time and layering it in, or trying to just shove it all in there. And all too often, even those of us who know better, cram for midterm, cram for finals. We get through the test. We don't do as well as we would have hoped, but we get by. And even if we got 100%, we still don't feel good about it because we know we're not really retaining it. And a month later, if you were quizzed again, you'd completely fail the test. None of it really sticks long term.
And that's why I'm afraid to take the test, because I did a lot of pumping and dumping.
Yes, and that doesn't work.
Set up.
And it doesn't work. So the key is small little bit, layer it in a little bit at a time. Differential learning is the key. And we're trying to help you with that with the proposed schedule, where you noticed I have quizzes at the beginning and end of every session, including adding TR quizzes at the end as well. Just short ones, 5 minutes, not really long. So like one card. Yep. So for example, this one, we asked you, outline the following elements of competency for cultural, educational, language, spiritual, environmental. Well, there's a number of things wrong with this card. So that's the question. That's not totally an unreasonable format for the question. That's fine. But then that's the answer they're expecting you to give. You're supposed to be able to answer all of that from one prompting of a flashcard. Now, this is expected on the test that you can do this, but a flashcard is supposed to be...
not.
What do you mean?
The test is mostly...
No, I know there's multiple choice. I understand that, but you're supposed to know this much material. But this is not how you get it to stick in your head more clearly. Instead, what you do is you would ask one question, say, outline the elements of competency, of cultural competency. Leave it at that, and then just cover that much, just the cultural competency paragraph. Then you say, outline the elements of educational competency. That's another card. This right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards in one. That's how you break it up. And you could break it down even more and be even that much more effective. But this should at least be broken down to 5 cards. Not only that, so it answers it answers cultural, educational, language, and environmental, right? It has the answers. It forgot spiritual and physical. It doesn't even have them on here.
Really?
Really. I had to write question marks Because, so physical they left off completely on both sides. But they asked the question about spiritual, and spiritual isn't even on the answer for the card. So I wrote in spiritual and physical there, because those are all part of what you're supposed to know, and it's not even in the card.
Wow.
And we just randomly pull these cards out and quiz on them, and every single card we've found just about is like this. I don't know who these Mometrics folks are, but they are clueless about learning. And then if you look at their study guide, like I got the Kindle, which is the study guide, all it is basically saying you just got a whole bunch of numbers, just paragraphs and paragraphs of stuff. It's yeah. I mean, and then the only good thing is it does have a whole bunch of quiz questions that, A, B, C, or D, so it emulates the test. And so we got to do some of that with you. But when it goes into the answers for your studying, answers and explanations, they're not even paragraphs per se. They're just huge
and that's why I got the
text.
Stumbo one after.
Yeah, I'm hoping that one's much better. Now, is that available on the market, or is that only?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's available if you go to sagmorepublishing.com.
Okay, but it's not on Amazon. That's why we couldn't find it, right?
No, it's on Sagmore.
Yeah, that kind of hurts them that they don't do that more. And that's another TR thing, is it's too siloed.
Yeah.
Right? So here's another thing I ran into.
But I highly suggest, if you're going to buy a book, buying it direct from the publisher. It cuts out the middleman, and it's a lot cheaper.
Nah, not always. Routledge screws you over completely if you try to buy from, if they'll even sell directly. A lot of times they try to go through anyway. It totally varies. I've usually gotten better deals from other sources because they can do bulk purchases and get you better discounts. Usually when you try to buy it individually, that's
with
expensive.
textbooks, I've found that it's better to buy direct from publisher.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that consistently.
Oh.
There have been times.
Well, with Sagmore and with the Idle Arbor, and there was one more for
Well, you don't have much choice with those. There's not a whole lot of options to buy them
TR
elsewhere.
Field, or not TR, AT Field, almost all of their books,
AT?
which are Sagmore Athletic Training.
Okay.
Which most of them are Sagmore too. Buying direct from publisher cuts the price almost in half.
Okay. And that's their particular model. Others, it goes the other direction, so totally varies.
They want you to buy from them. They get a better cut.
Yeah, it varies. What was I going to say? Okay, we're talking about these. Oh, darn it.
You had to deal with the books and
the books. Now it's falling out of your head too. Great. Okay, let me look at my outline here. Maybe it'll remind me.
Okay.
Because you went down that rabbit hole, and now I don't remember what the other point was going to be related to it. Okay, so learning. I know what it was. Okay. So, RPG Therapeutics LLC is now a Better Business Bureau A+ accredited organization. That just happened last week. And one of the things that is distressing that I've run into multiple times, ran into it with Google, I've run into it with different government agencies, is when you select your industry, right, what profession you are doing. Oh, where'd you go? Danielle? We lost her again. Okay, well, I can continue that without her. When you go to select your industry in the pull-down menus, for example, on Google, I want to list RPG Therapeutics LLC's business, Google business page as either therapeutic recreation or recreation therapy or both as one of the things that we do. There is no Google category, business category for either. If I go to the Better Business Bureau and I want to list my category, there is no category for recreation therapy or therapeutic recreation. There is for occupational therapy. There is for music therapy on both these sources. This once again tells me that we are doing a really poor job in recreation therapy. Okay, I'm doing a really poor job in recreation therapy in getting out there and getting us noticed. Because if there's not even a pull down in Google or the BBB or any of these places that list recreation therapy or therapeutic recreation, but music therapy and occupational therapy are listed, which are more specialized, especially music therapy is more specialized, we're doing something very wrong in this industry to not get in there. And I've been doing my darndest to try to get them to fix that. I have multiple times contacted Google about this. I've now filed a request through the BBB, and my case manager is supposed to be trying to get that up the chain to the board. It'll take months for them to review it, but try to get them. And I sent them links from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to show that there are many thousands of recreation therapists, servicing many, many, many thousands of clients. This is a viable industry and it should be listed. Why am I having to do this? I'm not a lobbyist. I don't work for ATRA or any of the others. I have a private practice and a nonprofit and all of that. Somebody should be doing this. Where is all of our ATRA membership money going to, if it's not going to the lobbying and marketing that it should be going to? That's usually what these professional organizations are supposed to do. OT has been doing a great job with marketing to the point where they're driving RT out of some places. They're taking over the leisure side. So I'm very concerned because I've only been in the TR industry for about 15 years, coming up on 16 years. So more than some, less than a lot of others. There's others that are far more veteran in this. And I think it comes back to my original hypothesis, or my original theory that I want to put a hypothesis for testing, that there's an extremely high level of ADHD in the TR industry.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Thomas about that. He was kind of like, "What?
From Idle Arbor, just so everyone knows.
What's that?
From Idle Arbor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like everybody I talk to who's been in the industry long enough, they kind of at first go, "No, you might have something to that."
Emily Messina, Professor Emily Messina wants to help with this study because she desperately wants to know herself.
And it wouldn't be that hard a study to do. I mean, we would need to get an IRB waiver, and then or maybe oversight, because we will be asking mental health questions, but we'll have people fill out an online survey. And the tricky thing with ADHD is there's a lot of misdiagnosis, unfortunately, because general practitioners and others aren't equipped to diagnose, and they do it anyway. They're trying to be helpful, but there's problems to that. But so we would have to ask a multi-stage question that says things like, do you believe you have ADHD? Has somebody ever said you have ADHD? Did you ever get a diagnosis from a GP, teacher, somebody else? Teachers aren't supposed to do diagnoses, but they do it anyway. Or did you get a diagnosis from a specialist, who specializes in ADHD? We'd have to ask a multi-stage question to drill into how valid the diagnosis is. And just see then how that compares to other fields that have had similar studies. I'm assuming other studies have been done. I could be wrong. And compare and contrast to other industries. It makes sense from a theoretical perspective that ADHD prevalence would be much higher in TR. It's part of what drew me to it because it is dynamic, improvisational. You have to think on your feet. It tends to be very physical. Doing lots of different things. You get to change constantly. You don't have to do the same old. It tends to be lighter in paperwork compared to the other. That's part of why I went into it instead of child psychology. I was warned away by child psychologists like, we know you. We know how you feel about paperwork. Look for alternative therapies. And that's why I went down recreation and music therapy, etc. Because I want to work with the clients and actually deliver results, not spend an hour. Because basically they're saying for 45 minutes of client is an hour of paperwork is what the point it's gotten to. And with these others, it's more like 15 minutes of paperwork, which is still a lot, but more manageable.
And then with TR, if you're doing your paperwork throughout, if you have a tablet or something that you're entering in.
Yeah, it depends on what you're putting in.
You could realistically clean it up in 5 minutes and it would be done.
Well, I see a lot of TRs doing it in that short of time, and if it's not a lot of times it's not very good data, but that's another topic. Anyway, this is something I would love to do a study on, in my copious free time. I think it would be but it explains, I think, in part because ADHD constantly craves new stimulus, etc. Doesn't like to do the same old, and this lobbying and marketing stuff is very tedious, and not what TR is about. And there's very few researchers in TR, right? I've had a lot of pressure from other professors to go on to a doctorate because I like research, and so few TRs actually like to do any research. And there are very few in the field, and a lot of them are retiring, which means a lot of the TR programs are going to shut down if there aren't more PhDs in the programs. And I just can't stand school. I love learning, but I can't stand the way school is done. So, the odds are and unlikely. But so it just seemed, and how many times has Emily and Dr. Cogley and all the others said, I'm so ADHD or, this. And sometimes it's an offhand comment. And others have been diagnosed. And some are really obviously so. And it really would make sense. But it also would make sense why the industry is struggling. Because if we have an entire professional population riddled with ADHD, it's going to be a problem to get our act together as a group. And it seems to explain I've seen this for 15 years. I've been very frustrated with the inability of the TR industry to really get its act together the way I've seen other industries do, and OT is doing. And that's very concerning.
I don't think that it's a prevalence of ADHD.
No, I don't think it's the only factor.
I think it's a prevalence of disabilities, because people flock to this because you can basically choose your branding of.
Yeah, I'm not saying exclusively that, but I'm just saying that would be a major contributing factor. If the prevalence is high, that would statistically make it more difficult to get these other things that require consistency and perseverance and all of that, and are not highly stimulating to come to fruition. So I don't know. Till the research is done, I'm making it up, but it seems possible. But we need to do something. We really need to see when we're not even listed. It's been bad enough about the insurance thing and Medicare and Medicaid and all that, but we're not even recognized in Google Business and in the BBB as a legitimate profession in and of itself. That's really distressing. And so I hope the BBB will be responsive to my request. Apparently it's the first time someone's requested it, they claim. That may only be for the region, but and that shouldn't be. I mean, I'm assuming there are other rec therapist practitioners out there who want to be in the BBB. I'm assuming. I could be wrong. I can't imagine I'm the only recreational therapist in the Better Business Bureau accreditation. That would be strange.
Well, a lot of the times they're underneath other
usually
big
working
businesses.
for facilities. Yeah, no, but there are a number of independent organizations out there that do TR. So I don't know. It's something I'd love to know more about. And again, a call out to any co-hosts, anybody interested in being a co-host or a guest on the show, please email trtalkshow@gmail.com. Again, the website's trtalkshow.com. And so we're going to go and wrap up. Danielle, is there anything else you wanted to cover on ATRA before we finish?
That it was a lovely time, and I wish we could have had the trailer the entire time,
Yeah.
but unfortunately,
yeah, the hotel had issues with that. Yeah. So hopefully we'll see more of the TR community on this show. I know some people have been interested, but they haven't quite followed up yet. Hopefully they'll get around to it. And so we can get more varied insights on these many, many topics related to TR. But I hope you found this useful. We went a little long because we needed to deal with the technical issues and such, but I think overall actual broadcast time, it'll be about right. So we'll be back again next Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. And we hope you will join us. Please do email or comment on the video. We are responsive. We're also on Twitter, I think. Let me make sure I've got that working. I think I've got a TR Talk Show. Yes, so twitter.com/TR Talk Show or just at TR Talk Show. So multiple. Oh, wait. Maybe not. I wonder if Twitter deactivated again. Gosh darn it. Because when you first start an account and then I'm logged in on one. Oh, I haven't created a short URL, so I got to fix that. Anyway, trtalkshow@gmail.com. That's the best way to get a hold of right now as the show grows. So we'll be back in. There'll be episode 6 next week. So wherever it may be well and happy therapeutic recreation.
Good night, guys.